So, what is the recipe for amazing sex? And as usual, I'd like to give a really short answer to get us going. And actually, this is kind of what's missing so badly in society. Generosity unlocks gratefulness and starts positivity loops. And so, without me going into it too much straight away, maybe I would just say for now is people, the reason why people have such bad sex, and I talk to people like, for example, they'll say like a friend of mine would say like, oh, I struggle to last like 10 seconds, okay, is because they do not value what they have. It's really easy not to value what you have. And if you are generally a generous person, like you're always giving, 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 you start feeling really lucky in every aspect of your life. Like if you're not feeling lucky in all aspects of your life, you're not suddenly going to feel lucky with the wife that you have. You're always going to think the grass is greener on the other side. That's just that's an automatic sort of reaction. People who are not generous are selfish, and selfish people are always trying to say, if only I had this, if only I had that, and then the never ending loop of searching for happiness. But if you're a generous person, you're creating positivity loops, which is first of all you feel lucky, and the second of so you're lucky and you appreciate your wife, and you therefore have a good, you enjoy having sex with your wife, but also because you're kind and whatever, your wife is obviously going to be nicer to you back. And so that's just the beginning of an answer. Any thoughts, Salim?
Yeah. Okay. Here's might be news to everybody, but the best, if you're a woman, the best sex to have is sex with a Muslim.
Okay.
You heard it here first. It hasn't heard that for a long time, but the best sex you will ever have is going to be with a Muslim, and I'll tell you why. It's because a Muslim man, his job is to make sure he's giving, and that means that the lady in it or his partner needs to be satisfied to the max before he helps himself. you know I think it's probably as decent a way I can put it,
Hmm.
uh, without getting abuse subsequently later on. But yeah, because I think for great sex you need to have anticipation. You need to be with somebody who's going to give as opposed to take, and be done really quickly. Um, in Islam, it's an act of charity. Sex is an act of charity if you fulfill your partner first. So it's what we call sadqa. It's called charity. Um, and the best sex is when there's no guilt associated with it, because it's you're not what they're called. You're not sinning in the eyes of God. It's all good. So that's when you are in a married relationship and sex is with mutual consent within that relationship. There's no guilt, and basically party time. So if I was you, find a Muslim man, and that's the recipe for amazing sex.
Cool. Yeah, and so I would agree. Either marry a Muslim man or a Jewish man or somebody whose prophet guided them on sex. So it's like sex is not some random thing. It's like you've got spiritual teachers saying this is how you should do it, and you should do it really well. For example, and just in line with what Salim was saying is so in Islam, the job of a man is to make sure his wife is satisfied. So literally, I'll give you a quote from Prophet Muhammad. He said, "Do not begin intercourse until your wife has experienced the same desire like you have desired that you experience, and do not fulfill your desire before she does." Right? So you're going out of your way to make sure your wife is getting an orgasm, right? Now, on the other hand, the person I was talking to who said, I was basically going at it like a pneumatic drill sort of thing and lasting all of 10 seconds. when you do that, you're totally focusing on your own feelings. And when you're totally focused on your own feelings, you're going to ejaculate or orgasm really quickly if you're a man. Now, as a man, you're supposed to be, and this is what psychologists say women like, you're supposed to be dominating the situation. Women like to be dominated. So it doesn't mean, by the way, when you dominate, it doesn't mean you don't care, but you are controlling. So you can control how fast you go in sexual intercourse. And when you do it so you're pleasing your wife. So foreplay, for example, is very much important in Islam. And if you're not doing that, this is part of generosity, right? If you're not generous, okay, then a whole cascade of things are going to start happening. If you're generally not generous, your wife, next time she comes to have sex with you, she knows what to expect, which is this guy is just going to do it as if I'm not even there, right? And I'm not going to have a great experience. And therefore, you're not going to have a great experience because she's not enjoying herself. She'll be like, when's this thing going to be over? Right? So there's so many things. And it all just starts with simple rules, which is in Islam, it says, paradise or happiness is the home of the generous, which is completely the opposite of what we learn in individualistic society. It's all about me, 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 me. And because everything's about me, 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 you think you're going to be really happy, but actually all the statistics prove that we're rapidly getting depressed and unhappy and miserable and all this kind of stuff. So that general unhappiness that you're finding in society also comes down back to bed when you're not generous, you're not kind, you're not going out of your way to be nice to everybody. Then you're not going to be kind to your wife either, and you're not going to experience much good sex. So when I said about, I think I've heard some Jewish rabbis talking about how to be good in bed. And so if anybody's giving you wise words about that, rather than what you see on TV, which are not wise words, which is just like, I don't know, it's fake sex, it's not what human beings are really like, like what usually happens in a Hollywood movie, they've just killed all the bad guys and they should be in shock and suddenly they're all making out. Like that doesn't really happen, does it? Like you'd be pretty scared if you just killed a few people. You won't be in the mood for sex, right? So Hollywood movies are not very realistic, and if you got a rabbi or an imam telling you how to do it better, more with a bit more wisdom, and hopefully it makes more sense what they're saying, then you probably get better at sex. So I agree. If you want good sex, have it with a Muslim man or a Jewish man or somebody who's spent time really thinking about it. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that there's a chapter Al-Maida of the Quran, which is the dictated word of God, that is chapter 4, verse 20, and it says, "Consort with kindness with your wives." So that's like clear instruction. Clearly, I'm not. I don't speak for myself when I got to work on my kindness. Apparently, so she tells me, but yeah. So that's it, really. Just I agree with you that kindness is the key to unlocking amazing sex.
Sure, yeah. I'm not sure if I'm thinking about the right verse, but there is a beautiful verse which, in a very subtle way, talks about how you should have sex with your wife, which is your wife is, yes, she's sort of fertile ground for your seeds, as it were, when to have children, but the way you approach your wife is described as tilth, which means basically something you treat well before you go to, right? So if you're trying to grow some vegetables, you have to take out the weeds, you have to treat it kindly and well, do everything you can to make sure that it's, I don't know, healthy and happy and all that kind of stuff. And then you go to your wife in that respect. And then there's also some other subtle messages that the Quran puts forward. So it also, for example, I can't remember the exact, there's, was it chapter, let me see. Yeah, let me check the verse if it's the same verse I'm talking about. Chapter 7, verse 189. Creating covers any. Okay, and so there's another verse that basically suggests. So in Islam, we don't focus too much on positions,
Is
but there is a position that's worth mentioning, which is the man on top. And why would that be the ideal position? Maybe it's a finishing position, is because that's where all most of the erogenous parts are. So you can imagine what that means, right? We're trying to keep it not too far over 18 rating this episode. But also, as I said before, psychologists have said women like to be dominated, so that's a dominating or controlling position, but also always do things within limits. That's what in Islam and all religious teachings are about, getting your natural urges within the limits. So you must be dominating, but within limits where you're understanding and listening and feeling what your wife wants and serving your wife and making sure, as I said earlier on, that she experiences the same level of joy that you do, at least. So, yeah. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, there's two things that
Yeah.
arise. The first one is the legality in Islam. You know, is one of the you're meant to get lashes if you're an adulterer, or if you sleep with someone outside of marriage. So you're meant to get lashes. You get lashed. So that's corporal punishment, which means it shows the how, and it's very rare. I can't even remember any other activity that you get lashes for, and that's written in the Quran. So it just indicates how serious it is in the eyes of God not to be married. So I just want to mention about that legality side. And the second thing is, when we're all trying to find relief, we all want to find a partner. But there's a verse, it says, "Tell the faithful men to cast down their looks and to guard their private parts, and tell the faithful women to cast down their looks and guard their private parts, not to display their charms except which is obvious, and put their scarves over themselves." So that's chapter 24, verses 30. And the reason I mention that is because this word comes up, which is jihad, which is the self-control. You're meant to control yourself, control your passions, control your impulses. And what that verse is saying is, like, don't watch porn. Don't check out girls, like, and, be open about it. It says control your glances, basically. And it's just so some
Yeah.
self-control.
And it's not like God makes up random rules. It's for your own good. So if you look everywhere, you're basically teasing yourself, and so your brain is plastic, which means you can easily change your mind about what looks good. So you might love your wife's nose, but then you start looking at some other lady's nose and other parts, and you'd be like, why isn't she like that? Because your brain starts adjusting to that. So you're basically making it impossible for you to have good sex if you're looking at porn. And statistically you will see that is, of course, it's going to be true. So controlling your gazes and like what you're looking at and what you're thinking about when you're looking at people is really important. Yeah, and why the lashes? I suppose it's really important to, again, Islamic teachings and all religious teachings are not random. It's like God doesn't want you to ruin your own relationships, and like you to know the severity of that. Nowadays, it doesn't seem to matter if you're in a marriage or not. And because of that, people are really harming themselves emotionally and ruining their sex lives and everything in the long term, because they treat sex like you can just do it and you can do it detached, and you're going to have mental problems. Definitely have mental problems if you have sex with somebody and you think you can just walk away with them and have no feelings for them. That's just not how human beings work. So I just thought that was worth explaining.